Hi everyone, I'm Andrew. I'm coming to you live from my basement in Pittsburgh. I'm a grad student at MSU and I have been coming to ULC for about a year and a half, 2 years, and now I'm coming to ULC each Sunday online, virtual church, which I think has been an awesome way to grow my faith and not ideal, but pretty good given the circumstances in our coronavirus world. I want to share with you some thoughts about obedience, which I think are very relevant for our world today, which relate to the book of Esther and which are kind of related to my own faith story and some experiences in my past as well. So I think just beginning, right now obviously is a time to obey our governor and our leaders and our president and take all the precautions we can to stay at home, to wash our hands, to try not to touch our face, which is, I know, sometimes difficult for me, and in order to keep as many people as we can healthy and slow the spread of coronavirus. And this seems to me like a fairly straightforward case where we should obey, like our best interests and the best interests of our neighbors, and loving our neighbors right now looks like an empty church, as the quote Haley Vay shared with us a couple weeks ago, which I really loved. Love looks like an empty church. And so I think in this time, it's important to be obedient. But I also want to share with you a story of my time playing soccer, kind of growing up, and in college. There's a lot of obedience associated with that. You also always have to listen to the coach, kind of obey, follow the game plan in order for your team to operate most efficiently, most smoothly, and in order to do as well as you can for the whole unit, for the whole team. And I was fortunate in college. I got to play club soccer, which is in between intramurals and varsity soccer, so it's competitive, but also we didn't have a formal coach. And kind of over the years, I became one of the leaders on the team and kind of the de facto coach. And it was through leading that team that I actually learned a lot about being a follower and what it is to be a good follower and a good teammate. One of our players on the team really demonstrated that to me. His name was Justin, and he was a good player, but he didn't always get the most playing time on the team, and he still brought a positive attitude, and he was still very receptive to feedback. It would have been easy for him maybe to be a little resentful or take feedback begrudgingly and say, oh, well, these coaches, these leaders on the team, they don't see the value that I'm bringing. They don't fully appreciate me. I'm not getting as much playing time as some other players on the team. It's not like, why am I even coming to practices? Why am I even playing? That's something a lot of people said when they weren't playing. But he kept a positive attitude through the whole experience. He would show up to practice with a joy that he was able to play the game, and he would take kind of constructive criticism and advice. He would receive it, he would listen, and you could tell he listened joyfully with a smile on his face and with energy in his actions. And I think that act of being obedient, but also joyfully obedient, of having a positive attitude as you're obedient, is something we can bring to our present crisis. We can obey our leaders, and that's good, but what's better is if we obey our leaders with a positive attitude, with joy in our actions. I think that can have a really positive effect on ourselves, on our own disposition, but also on our family who we might be cooped up in the house with, or our friends who we're calling on the phone. And so I'd like to just impress upon everyone that it's important to obey and obey the stay-at-home order, but we can choose whether to obey it and kind of be sheltered inside our homes, sulking, or we can obey it in a joyful way. And I know there's a lot of joy in the ULC community, and I'm sure a lot of you are obeying joyfully already. Another part about my past that I think ties in a little bit with obedience is that I was raised kind of in an interesting faith background. My mom is Lutheran, and my dad is Catholic, and so growing up, I would always go to the Lutheran church. But in high school and college, I did Catholic youth group, and in college, I actually went to Catholic church. It just happened. A lot of my friends were Catholic. People from my Bible study were Catholic, and I just felt comfortable there. And one of the things I really appreciated about the Catholic Church in their teachings is their Lenten practices. So each Ash Wednesday and Good Friday, the Catholic Church asks their congregations and their people to fast, which means, I think typically it means eating no meat on those days, which is why you see all the fish fries on Fridays in the Catholic Church during Lent. And then, so eating no meat, and then you eat only 3 meals. You have 2 smaller meals, and then a third meal, which is larger, but can't be larger than the 2 smaller meals combined. It was always a little confusing to me, but I think I got that right. Anyway, the Catholic Church requires their people, because obviously it's up to you in the end, but requires their people to fast on Ash Wednesday and Good Friday. And if someone obeys that fast, they're listening to the church, they're allowing the church to tell them what to do, and they're carrying out that action in that fast, hopefully with a positive attitude and a joyful heart. And there's something that I think helps you enter into humility, which I think no one shows humility better than Jesus. So fasting, I think, is a great way to draw closer to God, because you're drawing closer to his Son. You're entering into his sacrifice and his humility by allowing someone to tell you what to do, to sacrificing some of your daily pleasure in a way that pales in comparison to Jesus's ultimate sacrifice, but is no less still important, and can help bring you closer to Jesus. So I have kind of practiced fasting throughout Lent. I try and do no meat on Fridays, or no snacking on Fridays or on Ash Wednesday, because I think it helps me to feel a little bit of a sense of purpose, a sense of meaning, which of course our actions always have meaning, but some days, especially when you're stuck in the house all day, it's a little more difficult to see that. And it's through that meaning, it's through the sacrifice and the humility that I find some purpose and some motivation, and a motivation to draw closer to God. I also want to point out that being obedient is not always the right thing to do. And Haley Vay gave a great sermon a couple weeks ago on the gospel passage where the scribes and Pharisees asked Jesus, why don't your disciples wash their hands? Why aren't they following the rules? And then Esther also offers a great example of when it might be, when it's not best to just be obedient and go with the flow. So just kind of reviewing a little bit from Ash Wednesday, Mordecai, her guardian, alerts her of this plot to kill the Jews in the kingdom, and he asks Esther to go into the king's inner chamber, which was forbidden unless you were summoned, and to ask the king, can you please save the Jewish people? And although this is against the law, Esther eventually decides it's what's best. I have to do this in order to achieve a greater good, to save my people. And it's just an example of how things are never so clear-cut as you should always be obedient. I believe there's some value in obedience just for obedience sake, that humility I was talking about earlier. But also, it's important to recognize when being obedient might not be the best thing to do. I think this speaks to a lot of things about the Christian faith. We have a God who humbles himself so much to come into this earth as a child and to come into this earth as a human. A God and Jesus who washes his disciples' feet, who puts himself lower than his disciples. A God who says the last shall be first, the first shall be last. The foolishness of God is wiser than human wisdom. All these things seem almost contradictory, and yet, hey buddy, say hi buddy. So all these things seem almost contradictory, but I want to share a little story about why we need a faith that's nearly contradictory to explain our complicated world. So if you just imagine for a second that you were an alien and you come to Earth and you meet your first human and you see that they have one ear on either side of their head, one eye on either side, nearly perfectly symmetric. Their nose is symmetric and mouth is symmetric down the middle. Their arms and legs and feet and hands are all symmetric. And then if they told you that they have a heart on their left-hand side of the body, inside your chest, then the alien might guess that there's another heart on the right side. But of course there's only one heart. And so our bodies just reveal how seemingly contradictory and complex our whole world is. And so we need a God who says the first shall be last and the last shall be first, and a God who's all-powerful and yet chooses to allow himself to die. We need all that to help explain our world and to save us from our world. So I've always thought that's been such a cool story, and I just wanted to share that with you as I had a couple minutes to share my faith story and some advice for the present time. So I hope going forward this week you can obey all the stay-at-home orders and the hand washing and all of those practices, but I hope you can try and do that with a joyful heart. I'm praying for my ULC family back in East Lansing. I hope everyone's doing well and stays strong and healthy during this testing time. So I'm thinking of all of you. I love all you guys, and I hope you have a great Wednesday in Lent and can find some ways to draw closer to God in this difficult time. See you.